Hi, I'm Jeremy Tesch with EFI. I'm going to talk to you about the layout tools available in FireXF. FireXF has a comprehensive set of layout tools built in. Having layout tools built in means you don't have to step outside the Fiery workflow to prepare jobs for print, which can save valuable time. Preparing jobs within FireXF also brings consistency to job prep, where multiple applications might be involved in job creation. The layout functions that can be performed within FireXF range from basic scaling of jobs to advanced controls such as step and repeat, tiling, and one of my favorite, nesting. And then we'll show you how all this integrates with cutting and barcode creation. So let's take a look at what this looks like in FireXF. The massive amount of space available in large format printing is what makes it such a flexible and useful print medium. That's why layout options are a core part of Fiery's feature set. So it gives you these built-in and position tools to do that layout right at your fingertips. And if you use those layout options over and over again, you can quickly capture them as a workflow and give you this repeatable, dependable system without a lot of work. So the best way to look at layout tools is in the full screen preview that Job Editor provides. And you'll find the standard layout tools on the top toolbar. These are things that apply to any job, including jobs using advanced layout functions we'll show you in a bit. Here you can change scaling based on hard dimensions or percentage, change the position coordinates, and just general alignment and justification. There's rotation and flipping options, particularly useful in double-sided or backlit applications. In the preview itself, you can do a lot of these same things. Just simply select the image, and you can basically consider this a mini layout application, where you can grab the handles to scale, rotate, and there's some additional options in the context menu with a right click. Now, beyond these core layout tools, which you can apply anywhere, we have three main categories of advanced layout tools: step and repeat, tiling, and nesting. And I'll go through these with a few examples. The first layout option is step and repeat, and this one's easy to understand. Basically, it's a way to create multiple copies and do some advanced things with that. So I can grab a single file, turn on step and repeat, ask for 10 copies, and quickly apply that. And immediately I can see what that looks like. And I may want to fill the last row. That's a way of optimizing media use. And we may want to change space between jobs. And then you can combine this with the global layout options on the top toolbar, for example, align to center. So super fast and easy to build this layout. Now let's jump over to the finishing tab, add some crop marks to make finishing this a whole lot easier, and then adjust the layout to accommodate those crop marks. Then we can save this crop mark setup as a preset along with the step and repeat settings, which we can individually apply to jobs over and over again to speed things up. Now just two more examples to show some of the advanced functionality with step and repeat. So this file, which contains a gradient, is a great example of why you'd want to use flip and rotation options. It's likely you'll be separating these pieces later on in finishing. So with this, we can do a flip, and the gradients come into alignment, which gives us just that little bit of extra margin of error in finishing. So far, these are standard step and repeat options. We have a few that are more textile or repeat focused. So a repeat or a rapport is a single image that's meant to be tiled or repeated across a certain dimension to make up a much larger pattern. So I can grab this textile repeat here, and just like we did before, we can apply a step and repeat, but instead of defining it per copy, we can do it based on a pattern. So across the width, we can do a fill media width. What this will do is repeat that item across the sheet or across the full printing width. And if there's space available, it will use a portion of that repeat file to fill in the remaining space. And that way you get a continuous pattern. Now, if we were doing this on a textile printer, often the requirement is that you fill the entire width and then build a repeat a certain dimension back. So we can define a dimension here, then it will use full and partial repeats to fill in across the image and then to our defined height. And you'll notice in its current form, this isn't repeating seamlessly. And that's because this repeat was designed with a 1/2 inch or a 50% drop on the vertical. And oftentimes that's done in textile CAD applications because it does a better job at disguising the fact that this is a repeat file. So we can accommodate that inside Fiery by adding that drop. So we can do a drop size of 1/2. And once I do that, you can see that this truly is a seamless repeat, and I can then take out the space between jobs and everything disappears. and we have a perfect repeat. Next up are a series of layout tools surrounding the concept of tiling, and this is where you take a large project and divide it into smaller pieces. Fiery makes this easy to do right here in your workflow. With an integrated tool, it's very visual, and you don't have to go outside the workflow to use it. So let me show you just a couple examples. This first one is a graphic intended to be a wall covering for a 20-foot wall. And with a 64-inch printer, it's clear I need to divide this up into several sections. So if I turn on tiling, I get standard tiling. And because Fiery knows the underlying capabilities of the printer, it divides this up into 4 tiles. So if I know this is going to take 4 tiles, another way I could do this is I can make a quick modification to do this 4 by 1. And now, instead of 3 equal and 1 left over, I have 4 equally sized tiles of 60 inches. And it's very visual, so I can see exactly what's going to happen. In fact, the boundary between tile 3 and 4 interferes with this text or this type. So I can very easily grab this boundary and adjust it so it slices right in between these letters. And you'll notice I have complete control over making these just about any size. But as soon as I drag a tile that's larger than roughly 64 inches, a 5th tile is created to compensate because it knows all about the underlying printer capability. There are a few other areas on this image that would be difficult to create a perfect alignment during installation. The horizontal lines on these buildings could be a challenge, so I'm going to make sure the tile boundaries don't fall in those either. And I can see working with this, it's probably best to use 5 tiles. And that also gives me the flexibility to have a little buffer to make this all happen. So now we have my tile boundaries exactly where I want them. And once I'm happy with this job, I can click split, and 5 individual files will then be sent to my printer. Another example is this file. This happens to be a 60-inch job, so it does fit on my printer. But in this job, I need to divide the tiles into 10 inches by 10 inches and make a few other adjustments for my application. So we can do that with custom tiling and just specify 10 by 10. And very quickly we have a grid of tiles. Now if I have a door or a feature on this building where I need one larger tile, I can select multiples and merge that. Or I can take another tile and split that into its own grid of 2 by 2. I'm going to finish this job off with some overlap and glue area. And now, because this is a complex configuration, we can use the tiling preview to help the installation. So here we can see the overall configuration and then the individual tiles and how they relate to one another, including overlap, glue area, and alignment marks. So very useful, and then this can be saved as a PDF or printed. Okay, now moving on to nesting. Nesting is probably one of the most powerful and frequently used layout tool. And this is great for 2 reasons. One is it's a very fast way to assemble jobs and minimize media use because it brings them together sort of like a puzzle so that there's no wasted space surrounding jobs because they're filled with other adjacent jobs. The second use for this is just gathering jobs together in preparation for cutting. The great thing about this is that it's so fast and adaptable. Plus, each individual job in the nest can retain its own settings. So in that respect, you have a lot of flexibility for which jobs you bring together. The only thing they really need to share is the substrate or the media they're printed on. So let's grab this series of jobs and turn them into a nest. So the default mode here is to minimize media use. And what will happen is rotation and spatial placement will be optimized to minimize media consumption. Now, if you look here, you can see how this is working. Optimization is on media consumption, orientation is automatic. Now, once the jobs are joined into a nest, there's a lot of other things you can do. One is just copies within a nest. So that's sort of like combining step and repeat and nesting together. And to do that, all I need to do is select an item in here and then add to the number of copies. As soon as I do that, you can see they're stacked. At any time, I can right click and just simply update the layout or just click apply and it will recalculate the nest. The other thing to remember is that once jobs are into a nest, the preview is essentially a page layout application where I can grab things, position them, I can even scale them on the fly or on the toolbar. Also can lock things in position. So if I need this graphic in the center, we can lock that and then recalculate the nest and everything will orientate around that. So as we work through these options, you can see there's a lot of flexibility and power here, but it's not very likely you're just going to create a nest, print it, and you're done. There's finishing involved at the end because you're eventually going to separate these pieces into individual jobs, either to different customers or just separate pieces. So let me show you how this can integrate with finishing. And first, let's just assume we're doing something simple like straight edge and razor blade. So we can turn on marks, standard crop marks. Now this is sort of a complex jigsaw puzzle. Let's go back to Nest and we can tune this a little bit. Let's just set this to cut edges horizontally. So if I'm doing this by hand, arranging these into rows and columns would be much easier to separate these pieces. Now if I'm in a situation where I'm producing a lot of this, especially with several printers, the hand finishing required I would become way overwhelmed. So let's go back to finishing and show you what that can look like. So instead of crop marks, let's do cut marks. And with our cut options within Fiery, we can integrate with cutting devices. So we can automate some of this and really speed things up. So for this example, let's turn on a cutter. As soon as I do that, you can see there are marks placed that are compatible with that cutting device. And now we can update that layout and we can see things are much more efficiently placed because we don't care about how difficult this is to cut. And just like any other layout option, the cut data for this exact layout, as I'm creating it on the fly, is then going to be sent to the cutting device. So that makes for a top to bottom, totally integrated system. And again, complete flexibility. So now that we have this set up with cut integration, you can imagine we could have many printers producing these. And for some cutting devices, we can turn on barcode functionality. With a barcode, we can make an alignment between what we're printing and the cut file. So if you can imagine 3 printers producing a pallet-sized stack of prints, that coordination becomes really important. So we can take that pallet, wheel it over to the cutting device. Sometimes this is several days later, we can zap the barcode and that alignment comes together. So speaking of the flexibility, we could also have an inventory challenge, a situation where we have that substrate, but not on the correct roll width that aligns with the way we set up our job. This is where integration and all this alignment is really important because I can very quickly change the media boundaries and then all of my layout and cutting can be adapted on the fly, right there at time of print. So you're not going to lose any time jumping out of your workflow, backtracking, try and fix this. So there's just one last category of nesting that can be super useful, especially in a proofing situation. So you can take any group of nests and apply uniform scaling, and this can give you a built-in scatterproof functionality. So if you take your images about to go into production, you can very easily make smaller samples of them and basically test run your color before you go into full production. So that covers the main categories of nesting. So far what you've seen is a very hands-on manual process of working with jobs, and that's a very common way of working with nesting. But the last thing I'm going to leave you with is the ability to set this up ahead of time. And this can put your nesting in full autopilot. So just like anything, nesting can be part of a workflow. And you can build an unlimited amount of workflows to do different types of nests and layout. Nesting is one of those things that looks a little bit different. So here, if you're preparing a workflow for nesting, everything down here is what you've seen before. But this top section is unique. And because you're not doing this manually on the fly with things you can see, you have to tell the nesting function what to do. So here you're specifying a percentage or criteria that needs to be met before the job is considered complete, and then it starts processing. Most often this is associated with remote clients pushing jobs into the server and/or hot folders. So you can imagine jobs continually entering the server. You have to have some sort of cutoff point where, yes, we have enough jobs to fill this space. So that wraps up nesting and our last category of layout tools. To summarize, these are easy to use, built-in tools that really do bring consistency and efficiency to print rooms.